Well, it is another wonderful podcasting day, and this is Vizier Please, a hateful voyage through the Delta Quadrant. I'm Joseph.
I'm your co-host, Peter.
Yes, Peter, and as my co-host, are you going to buy that fetching black top?
You're referring to the post that someone, I think it was Matt Slayer from And Now We Drink? Is that his podcast?
Yeah, God. Matt Slayer from And Now We Drink. He's got an incredibly interesting podcast if you have any interest in booze, porn, and some of the subcultures that come from those two things in Los Angeles. He's been a good friend to us, actually. He's given us a lot of advice and awareness of things about podcasting here in current year.
Episode 37, he's got a lawyer who focuses almost entirely on pornography and pornography industry law. And that was a really, really good listen. So if anybody out there is looking for some new material, again, I believe it was episode 37 on, we could throw the link up on some of the social media that we've got floating around out there.
Absolutely. I honestly, just as you said, even if you don't have a tremendous amount of interest in porn drama, that conversation they had with the lawyer, it's like you learn things like, oh, okay. So I highly recommend giving that one a listen if the topic at all intrigues you. It's just about how esoteric concepts are handled in litigation. And if that isn't a deep enough nerd move, Matt did share a podcast co-host branded top that we shared on our Vizier Please Facebook page. And it's a fetching piece of podcast wear, Peter. You look good in it.
Well, like I said on my reply, it definitely looks better than the jumpsuits that the guys on Voyager are wearing. And I enjoy the fact there's a lack of a purple turtleneck. So if we ever make our way out to, the big leagues and we're doing some podcasting from Dragon Con or something like that, maybe I'll treat the audience to some hairy chest tastefully revealed with the co-host outfit.
It's a Star Trek tradition to have some skin showing on the man side, in particularly in the chest area. Those deep neck, cuts.
I'll tell you what.
Show was rebooted in the 80s, my friend. It's a holdover.
I'll tell you what, you guys, you audience out there, you get enough listeners to where we can demand podcast space from Dragon Con. You get us into the big leagues. Not only will I wear that co-host outfit, but I'll also find a TNG first season skort, and I'll rock that as the bottom.
Oh, please, internet, make this a reality. There needs to be photographic evidence. There's just a lot of things need to happen. That needs to happen right there.
So speaking of the page.
Yeah, we started this week a Vizier Please discussion group, also on Facebook, to whom all are invited. It's closed only to prevent nefarious Russian spam bots from joining. But
I was hoping it was closed because you respect the fact that we both have good jobs and don't necessarily want friends and coworkers and family seeing us debating the shittier points of Star Trek vehemently with each other in a public forum.
Unfortunately, my coworkers already know.
How?
Because I'm actually friends with some of them outside of work. So I let slip my secret. So I don't have nearly as much to hold back, perhaps, as you do. But it's closed. So consider that a safe space, if you will, for getting your nerd on the deepest cuts of the nerd loin. For example, I think you found a really intriguing map of Federation space that someone came up with that seemed to really attempt to place all of the references to places in the Federation and in the Romulan Empire and Klingon Empire in spatial relevance with each other to try and accurately portray where things are and how big things are.
So thanks to friend of the show, Nate, for finding that one. He was watching, I think it was Eye of the Needle. Is that the one? Yeah, that Eye of the Feels, as we put it. The best episode we've watched so far. We started talking about quadrants and what that was in three-dimensional space. And he found the quadrant map, which was cool. I thought it was interesting that Federation, that Earth basically lies right on the border of the Alpha and Beta quadrant, and they split it like a prime meridian there. And then he found another map that was like this big-ass map of all known, most of the TNG stuff shows where, like you said, the Romulan, the Klingon stuff is, and just how big Federation space is. That was really, really fascinating sitting there and digging into the nerdy on that. It reminds me back in, middle school. So probably about the time right before Voyager came out. But did you ever play MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries?
I sure as shit did. That was my favorite PC game.
So there was an old service back before Web 2.0. This is like back in dial-up days, and there was no BattleNet or Steam or anything like that. So there was this thing called Kali, and it was like a matchmaking service for people who wanted to play games, and there was this thriving MechWarrior 2 community in there, and people had like this big game board, and sectors would flip based on which house controlled them, and it would pair who you were going to fight for the next round. It was really, really in-depth, and it was a cool example of like ingenuity people had before, big corporate entities were dictating how to play video games and where to play them. But someone had made a big homebrew map of the universe, and that map was so big that my friend's 386 couldn't even load the map. It was crazy, but really cool stuff. Really cool stuff, and I'm a big nerd. So yeah, that's up on the Voyager page, I believe, and then we've also have the Voyager Please Trauma Support Group discussion group, and they're up in there too. So check them out for sure.
Absolutely, more the merrier. And don't worry, Peter, MechWarrior 2 Mercenaries was the very first game I ever played online. If I recall correctly, I played it through the Microsoft Zone service, and it was terrible. And I learned that people on the internet are terrible at a young and tender age.
Critical life skills.
Critical skill. Yeah. And if Bob Kaiser is out there, whose computer and exceedingly rare broadband connection was responsible for this growth that I was able to have. Thank you, Bob. Thank you for creating the terrible person that haunts the internet to this day. You never knew.
While we're on nerdy things real quick, too, I'd like to give a big shout out to my YouTube feed, which is now a complete mess of almost all Star Trek material. From the little...
that algorithm, you start going down rabbit holes on YouTube, that Google algorithm is going to make you pay for it.
Anything cool that I used to get shown in my YouTube feed is now completely gone with like the most dingiest, grungiest, grossest Star Trek ship breakdown, fan theory nonsense possible. Like I watched a couple of videos here and there, and the whole thing just completely overrun. The Borg have assimilated it.
I think my favorite deep nerd shit on YouTube as far as Star Trek goes is the what if scenarios if the Dominion initially won their war against the Federation. Have you seen that?
It's prompted me, but I'm traumatized at this point where I'm afraid to click on anything because I don't know if I'll ever dig my way out of this Star Trek YouTube.
You won't. Let it embrace you like a warm, crusty blanket that needs to go to the wash but won't because of the Mountain Dew stain. Just do it. Do it, man. You're a new father. You don't understand wading in filth.
Yeah, I do. Speaking of wading in filth, Season 1, Episode 8, Emanations.
Oh, okay. So this is, I think, going to be a first for us because I know I said at the end of our last episode that I expected this to be bad, and certainly my ancestral memory of the middle school / early, I guess it would have been middle school me that remembered this episode certainly recalled it as bad. But upon the rewatch, I really fucking liked it. I really enjoyed this episode.
Did you by chance hit your head on a low-hanging shelf or perhaps slip outside in the ice and bounce your head off the parking lot gravel?
I did not. I dug this on so many levels. I thought the plot was great. I thought the acting was really good in places. I felt like the subtle world building they did as part of the plot had a defter hand than almost anything we've seen on the show. This was a hit. This was a hidden and unexpected gem for me, and I know you hated it.
This might be one of the worst I've seen so far, and I think this was a great example of one of these situations where I have to believe that the writers of Voyager wanted to desperately write anything that was not science fiction. I don't know.
I could not possibly disagree more, and that you know what. Let's hash it out, man. Let's start in and we'll see where we stand on things. And if we end with the same thoughts we started with. Maybe you can convince me that it wasn't as good as I thought it was. Maybe I can convince you that it's better than you thought it was. The episode rolls into its start. Like, you know how you have those rolling stops, at stop signs, you just kind of keep going.
That's my life. I never give the 3-second stop. I ride dirty.
Yeah, this episode's riding dirty at the stop too. It just kind of rolls into the action immediately. They say they've discovered a new element out in space somewhere, and it's incredibly dense, and we get a quick little technobabble exposition that they're excited about this because it can help them do all kinds of cool space magic shit. So they want to find out more about it, and they get to investigating these asteroids nearby that seem to have quite a bit of this mineral going on, and it just so happens they all have M-class atmospheres in it conveniently. So they dispatch a quick posse of B'Elanna, Chakotay, and this episode's featured player, boyish, doughy Asian man, Harry Kim.
Yeah, you got a real scrub team going out on these. So the asteroids, they were asteroids, planetoids, whatever, that formed rings around a planet, correct?
Yeah, so they're in orbit of a gas giant. It's got a real intense kind of ring situation going on. And these asteroids all are in orbit of that.
Yeah. So right off the bat, I'm just kind of rolling my eyes like, okay, of course these asteroids have completely sealed inner cave cavities that, are perfect for away teams to go ahead and bait in. They beam into these things and I'm perked, They beam into these things, standard away team gear on this. So they're rocking tricorders of stupid ass wrist flashlights and phasers. And as I paused the episode to start writing down about how stupid it is that there's Class M atmosphere. Class M, by the way, is like Earth. Earth is a Class M planet. They're supposed to be kind of rare. You get a lot of fights between like Romulans, Klingons, and Federation over Class M planets because it's the only thing that's suitable for colonization. So I'm writing down how stupid it is that these things are Class M. And then I see in the freeze frame I took spider webs all over the place, which I'm also like, how stupid, why are there spiders in space? On asteroids, this is dumb. And then this is the only time I get excited and happy in this entire episode because I'm like, fuck yes, space spider dungeon. This might be cool after all.
My wife's reaction was the exact same as yours. Because what happens is they get down in this cavern, there's spider webs everywhere, they're pretty confused by this, and then suddenly they find a body that seems to be wrapped in spider webs, and then they find a shit ton of bodies that are wrapped in spider webs. And Stevie, my wife, she immediately was like, oh shit, is there going to be like a space spider? Is it Space Shelob? The fuck is going to go on?
This awesome. This might be a surprise to you as we sit here on our Star Trek Voyager podcast, but I love D&D.
I'm shocked. Please go on.
So when I see a cave and I see spider webs, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking space spiders, and then you see a bunch of dudes all like spider webbed up and dead on the floor, I'm like, I'm going to get my wish. Maybe Joe was wrong. Maybe this is going to be a sweet ass episode of like space spider dungeon crawl. And then I notice our away team that has phasers out at every, moment possible, including, going in to meet with the minister of boring. What would we call the old alien race?
That would be shitheads.
The shitheads, yes. And there they are in this fucking spider dungeon. And like, it doesn't dawn on anybody like, hey, maybe you should pull your phaser out because there might be space spiders.
Yeah, those things, they'll poison you for 1d4 rounds, and you'll take con damage from that, man. You can't fuck with that. You don't want to get caught flat-footed. You need your dex save.
Oh, do you like Dungeons and Dragons 2? I take it.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
And I want to point out too, as stupid as those wrist flashlights are, like now I think about it, if you got your phaser in your hand, you're pointing your phaser and you got your light in the same direction. So there's really no reason not to have the phasers out at this point. I'm just saying. So continue.
So they cut back after credits to this revelation that they appear to be surrounded by dead aliens. And we get a little interrogative where Chakotay, the Indian guy, is making a passionate case not to, disturb a burial ground.
Chakotay proceeds to unroll his now famous jump to conclusion map, where they start looking at things. And not only does he say, hey guys, leave this stuff alone, but let's go the extra stupid mile and not disrespect them by using our passive scan tricorders to see what's really going on here. We're just going to visually inspect things and forget about the whole point of this mission, which is to, try and get some rare minerals. I think at this point, if they're not going to bother scanning these things, just get the hell out of here. You're not going to take any of the bodies. You're not going to really deep dive into what this rare mineral, this brand new element is inside these guys. Why waste the time? Get out.
This is where our opinions start to diverge, because as much as I am jabbing the writers in the ribs a little bit for being a little too on the nose with Chakotay's dialogue about not disturbing, the death rituals that surround them, I actually appreciated that we have this little dialogue between B'Elanna and Chakotay where he's explaining what you can try and glean and discern just by observation of the environment and the disposition of the bodies, and trying to determine what's going on with this culture and from an anthropological standpoint. I thought it was clever, like that they established that this before in a throwaway line of dialogue episodes ago, that this is an interest that Chakotay has always had, and now here he is demonstrating that is real, that he does have an interest in this, and he's explaining how you can draw these conclusions without them necessarily using their technological tools. I thought it was cool. I thought it was an interesting point.
Sure.
But they don't spend much time on it because...
Well, let me real quick. So, he's got his jump to conclusion mat out there, and he lays down, like you said, you can casually infer this and that. Look, you can tell the ritual burial because of the serenity of the figures laying there. And I'm like, whatever, dude. You could just as soon say that, these people seem peaceful because the space spiders that bit these people and webbed them up have a narcotic byproduct of their bites. So if you want to start pulling stuff out of your ass, Chakotay, it goes both ways. And I would say that space spider bites causing a hallucinogenic byproduct is the more fun way to go. And also get them phasers out, because you still haven't disproven my theory. But
before they can get sneak attacked by a spider, they get sneak attacked by, oh no, there's a subspace thing. So there's all of a sudden some flashing lights. There's a subspace fissure opening up, and Chakotay's like, we got to get the fuck out of Dodge. Unfortunately for them, the person that is manning the transporter is Ensign Seska. And as we will see another time during this episode, Seska's not the best transporter operator. She has some problems executing on the transporter. Now, maybe, as we'll see later, purposeful problems, but she attempts to get all the trio out of there before this new terror in space does something bad by simply just beaming up everything that's in proximity together. But what happens is, instead of getting the whole away team, she gets her two Maquis buddies and some rando dead body that just happens to be joining them for the ride.
Fresh dead body too. Yeah, that's a good point too. And as you're just talking about that, I was like, did she intentionally leave one of the bridge officer Starfleet people behind? But
I mean, if I were Janeway, I'd be really fucking suspicious. Like, oh, Seska, you just so happened to fail at beaming aboard, one of my loyal officers and got your two buddies. That's awful. That's awful convenient of you.
Well, that kind of thought has no place in Star Trek Voyager, as we've already
said. Clearly. That's clearly the case.
Face value society on this ship.
Even for a character that literally, spoiler alert, turns turncoat in 2 episodes.
Oh, really? It's that soon?
Yeah, it happens in season 1. But they get this body on board, and apparently because this one accidentally came with them, they're okay to science this one up, because B'Elanna's just scanning away at it. It's like, my wife's like, is it like a dog? If it follows you home, can you science it? Is that how it happens? Okay, you have to feed this one, but you can totally do. They do
make a pretty convincing argument. Chakotay's like, respect their privacy or whatever, and they're like, look, dude, now Harry's ass is on the line. It's time to set aside our best intentions and get real about this situation.
Agreed. And point is, though, that they've lost Harry Kim. He's somewhere else. They've got this body, and the body's got like a sliver of life left in it. And they're like, okay, let's get this body to the sick bay and see if we can't, revive it or something, because it's the only way we're going to figure out what the fuck just happened.
How good would it have been when like the subspace disruption started on that asteroid? Had someone scream like, "No, I don't want to go back in time." Damn it, a time warp again.
Oh, Jesus.
Drat. So, speaking of Harry, I don't even know how to roll out this scene, man. So they cut away to what I think we should assume at this point is another point in time, because it's season 1 of Voyager, so why not? And instantly...
You're just going to assume if it's unexplained, it must be a temporal plot.
Yeah, and
in the absence of evidence otherwise, it's clearly another time conundrum.
Yeah, and later in the episode, they even say, "Hey, this is an alternate reality or universe or something." I would say, a different point in time would fall right within the scope of possibilities there. But
I think they specifically suggest that this is another dimension. You never see much, but that's what they suggest, that it's another dimension. But go on.
So my eyes are assaulted by some of the worst costumes. I would say that these costumes are so bad, they're right up there with the Candy Cord tragedy. There's some sort of a priest leading a prayer around a poop pod that roughly resembles prune or a poop. And I can only say that I would like to call it another discount African King outfit. He might be shopping at the same place as Neelix. Maybe he was really got into watching Black Panther and he decided to go along. But these costumes these guys are wearing, they look like they're made out of grandma's drapes. And this guy's got a big cone head hat, and they spared a lot of expenses in dressing these aliens up.
I would call it discount Wakanda gear, except it's like they actually spent money on it. Unlike the Candy Corn tragedy, which was really bargain basement and obvious. Like, all right, slap this shit together. These guys just look like humans. Whatever. We're going to do this at a waste treatment plant. We're going to barely do anything to make this look like this is another place, right? That looks slapdash as hell. They spent time, energy, and effort trying to make this shit look like the way they made it look. It just looks bad.
The only thing that they spent time on is like, how tall do you think we could make this hat before it crumples in on itself? And the answer to that was pretty tall.
They've got a lot of nose ridge action and tons of forehead on these aliens. And we're seeing them for the first time when there's this couple that's having this talk about the man in this pairing. They get a lot of feel like this guy's going to die, right? He's getting ready to die. He's speaking of the next emanation, the way it's being toned about seeing people who are already dead, that he is clearly going through some sort of process where he is going to be killed. And this poop pod, as you so adequately put, seems to be the center of the ritual where this happens. And they are having some kind of little talk. There's family around. And then suddenly you hear banging on the inside of the poop pod. And Harry Kim is like, "Get me the fuck out of here. I want out." They open it up and they're like, "What the fuck? Who the fuck are you? What the fuck is this?
How do you have clothing that looks as stupid as ours?" Yeah, so that's a smash cut for the beginning of basically the first act, and it looked like there's a commercial break there. They come back to Harry Kim, who was talking to the lead alien.
Yeah, they called him the chief thanatologist.
Thanatology, yeah.
Which you and I know for even deeper nerd reasons than we have suggested so far, is the study of death and death rituals. And Harry is confused. He's not quite connecting the dots yet immediately about what's happened or what they are assumptions they're making. But I feel like this scene was excellent because it gave you this growing sense of dread from the aliens who are listening to him talk about, oh yeah, I was on this asteroid, there are a bunch of bodies around, and then the subspace fissure opened up and I wound up here, and this is I'm from planet Earth, I'm part of the Federation, all this. He's explaining this very matter-of-factly and scientifically, whereas we have now been given a clear impression these aliens think that wherever Harry Kim came from is a mystical afterlife. And so he is just like rapid fire. Okay, this is what's happened. I don't know exactly how I wound up here, but this is where I was beforehand. And they're like, wait, what do you mean you saw dead bodies in some fucking asteroid? And especially the guy who's there to die is obviously panicked at this revelation that's being handed down that, whoa. What? Where are you? What's going on? This is concerning me about all of my previously held notions about death and my culture.
Yeah, the two big takeaways here in this scene for me is one, people in gold uniforms give no fucks about the Prime Directive because Harry just breaks like a million rules in one frantic sentence. It doesn't really dawn on him till later on. He's like, oh yeah, this is kind of a first contact situation and maybe I should just shut my fucking mouth.
It's precisely how it goes down. He doesn't realize until the fucking cat is way out the bag, like, oh no. Which I think God bless, I thought this was going to be shit because we were going to have to spend all this time with Harry Kim. But I'd buy that. He's the new guy. He's confused. He just wants to go, like, I just want to get back where I was. What the fuck? He's not thinking like, oh wait, I'm making first contact with an alien race, possibly in another dimension, and I may also be accidentally shattering everything they know about death.
Yeah. And this scene, so yeah, the first part is that he doesn't give two shits about Prime Directive, and two, I see the rest of the episode for exactly what it's going to be, and it's just thinly veiled, essentially, religion bashing. And that's kind of where I was like, this feels like lazy writing, and basically they're going to sit here just throwing low blow punches at the audience on this one.
I don't agree that it was religion bashing in the slightest. If anything, it was it was particularly at the end an affirmation of the inability to know anything about death and what happens upon death, which is something I think Star Trek's done an okay job at dealing with in the past. But it's about this sort of alienating experience, and getting your beliefs questioned, and I think there's a lot of good beats in here. I don't think it really bashes religion. If anything, it sincerely demonstrates what happens when your faith gets questioned, and you're presented with evidence that really shakes you to your core. I mean, all of the guest actors on this show that are playing all the aliens, I felt like they did a great job.
Well, let's talk about that real quick. Who do we got lined up here? You got the main guy. I'm sorry, the alien who was going to be willing himself to death to accommodate his family, as we'll find out. I call him Mr. Eating Disorder when he's sitting there shirtless.
Emancipated man, yes.
Yes. And then the head thanatologist, I thought actually did a pretty decent job with his acting. And he seemed pretty familiar. So I looked him up to see what was under that makeup. And I did not write his name down because I'm a piece of shit. But that guy has some pretty cool roles under his belt. He's Deep Throat from X-Files.
Okay.
And also more specific to Star Trek fame, that's the guy that played Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens, in the TNG episode where they go back in time and Data gets his head cut off by the telepathic alien kidnappers. No.
Oh, yeah. Time's Arrow. That was a season finale, season premiere, two-parter.
So this dude's got some chops under him. So Carrie gets pulled out of the poo pod, and they put him in some sort of a locker room where he's got a roommate, the roommate being Mr. Eating Disorder. And that guy's going through some shit with his wife where it's clear he's starting to get cold feet about what's going on here, especially in light of Harry appearing in the pod of enlightenment or emanationism or whatever. And then you've got the chief thanatologist, Deep Throat, on the other side of literally a folding metal room divider that is maybe at the most 6 feet wide or I don't know, deep. And as if it's not flimsy enough, there's like ventilation holes in each of the panels. So there is nothing separating these two people other than a novelty. And the head thanatologist is like, whoa, 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 come here, alien guy. Like, let's talk quiet, because basically, like, you're super heresy to everything we've got going on here in our most holy place, and we don't want you spooking the rubes here. So, and never at any point he's like, let me give you your own room that's like locked down, where you're not going to be able to talk your crazy heresy to a guy who's about to crawl into this incineration pod.
I mean, I get that that's a obvious logical oversight if we were approaching this from a what would you actually do in this situation perspective, but I understand why they had to cut that corner, because they wanted to have these different interactions between the different archetypes of personality in these kinds of situations. So I kind of gave it like a one of those suspension of disbelief passes.
It's a big corner to cut, man.
I mean, I agree. It's an obvious oversight. Like, why the fuck did they have this guy circulating with anybody?
It's right up there, too, because the guy's like, the head thanatologist is like, you must have more information on. And it, to the episode's credit, instead of it being like some sort of inquisition that like drags him off and starts like torturing him or treats him like a monster, like, they're pretty receptive. I mean, for all you know, this is first contact with any sort of alien creature on this that this species has had, and everybody's just pretty cool with him. Like, he's weird, but no one's like finger pointing or deathly afraid of him.
They seem very fascinated by the simple fact that he's from where they would consider their afterlife. Sure. So they're like almost reverent with him to a degree.
Sure. So they're like, do you not have any sort of scans of what the other thing is? And at that point, it's just like you hear that womp, womp, womp. And it's like, oh, had only stupid Chakotay not made the only comment I've ever seen in Star Trek history where it's, don't scan this stuff. They're just laying out all these, I don't know, lazy writer shortcuts of tin folding walls and not using a tricorder despite someone specifically asking for scans later on. And
agreed. There are some shortcuts, but I think it serves the better drama of the story. So I think that's kind of where we diverge. I agree that they exist, but I think it's done in service of the story rather than to its detriment. The next scene...
This is a hard left turn in Federation sciences for me.
The next scene is probably the scene that had me wanting to throw things at my television, though, which is where the doctor explains that he was perfectly capable of reviving this body that had teleported in with Chakotay and B'Elanna. And he's like, it was no problem. She had brain cancer, so I just kind of uncancered this brain that I'd never seen from another dimension. You know, went and replicated some new brain cells, smacked them right in there, of a brain I've never seen before, and just used the standard post-mortem revival protocols. There was no problem at all. It was basic. It was easy. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yes.
What do you mean it was easy to do all of that? Like, it was easy to just uncancer a dead body, replicate brain matter of a brain you've never seen before, and then apparently there's a protocol for reviving dead people post-mortem revive.
Yeah,
who dies in the Federation now? How is anyone ever dead?
The true backbone of the Federation might has now been revealed with its United Federation of Planets necromancy.
Shit, yes! Absolutely! That's exactly what he describes.
The Starfleet is the byproduct of the Reanimator, as we have now seen. Those red shirts and everybody else. So
Jeffrey Combs is in Star Trek. There's a connection. Wayun the Vorta from DS9. He's a huge player in that. Apparently, circulation of the Reanimator tech, that could be canon.
Yeah, but I mean, this is a real kind of head scratcher. Like, okay, so you just had half your crew, all these important people in your crew die. When Voyager got tossed, you just overcame fucking brain cancer. Why, again, as you just pointed out, why are there any dead people in the Federation?
Yeah, it's my wife said the exact same thing. Like, how the fuck she brought up Lieutenant Hottie, the helmswoman.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how did she die?
R.I.P.
R.I.P. Lieutenant Hottie, the Betazoid helmswoman. Like, what? How is she allowed to die? Like, apparently you can just revive people from death. There's a protocol for that, so it couldn't just activate the all holograms. Be like, all right, necro up me a new first officer. You know, maybe you can combine some pieces. I don't know, just make it work.
Starfleet's street name, the Necrons. Just a weird weird layout on that, and even Janeway kind of even seems to flinch a little bit, like, oh, how'd you get her back awake? Now, an interesting point, and probably would anybody would explain away this conundrum we have here. These poo pods, they don't just teleport you off; they, in essence, kill you. And that'll come into play a little later on when Harry tries to, hijack one to get home. Like, these people fleshing out this moral dilemma the Mr. Eating Disorder is going to run into. You're not dead and they're just shuttling off corpses. You're effectively electing suicide.
Correct. Do we ever get a name for this race? I don't remember their name. What do you want to call them? I got something for you.
Yeah.
Kevorkian ridge faces.
I was going to say the buttheads because they got those big lobes on the front.
How about we compromise Kevorkian buttheads? Because they're euthanizing people.
Sounds like a magic card. I like it.
Okay. The Kevorkian buttheads, they I guess let's roll back for a second. We didn't finish the scene with the revivification of our third alien player, the lady. They wake her up, and the scene that they have with her after they wake her up, I thought was actually pretty cleverly shot because they shoot it from her perspective, and the way that the camera angle works, it's very alienating and panicky, and it puts into perspective her sudden loss of control and panic at being confronted by this very strange situation where she's in Voyager's sickbay when she was expecting to be in the afterlife,
looking for her brother.
Right, looking for her brother, and it's like immediately you get more of the sense of how deeply ingrained this race's belief about what their afterlife was going to be is. It seems completely universal and accepted, and she is absolutely astonished to find that she is just in some ship in some part of some galaxy in some other reality, and that her brother is not there. I thought it was cool. I thought it was an interesting way to shoot the scene to emphasize her panic by shooting it from her perspective.
First off, I don't believe that this is really an alternate dimension for starters. I think they just threw that out there to say, hey, anything's possible. I don't know where the fuck I'm at and whatever. There is a lot of weird camera work in this episode, and I don't think any of it's really good. Like anything with Harry Kim over in the Kevorkian Buttheadville is shot like really tight with a little bit of a fisheye lens on it.
And also a lot of Dutch angles.
Yeah, it felt very, I don't know, it just got annoying to me. And the scene where they wake her up and like 5 people are crowded around her bio bed. I've never seen them bring anybody back like gang tackle style like that. And there's a lot of touching in this episode too. When she starts freaking out, like Janeway and the doctor are definitely there putting the hands on her hard until they have to finally knock her out with the hypo spray. And Harry Kim gets touched a lot as well. It was a very obvious attempt to try and build on that claustrophobia and the unnerving thing, which you say you appreciated in the scenes, but I thought it just came off as sloppy and lazy.
This is something I liked. Everything you just mentioned, I agree 100% that it's there. And I thought it added to the episode. I thought it built tension. I thought it conveyed the claustrophobic feeling and the tightness of the shots and the weird angles. And it belayed this alienation, which I thought was really the key emotional underpinning that a lot of these characters were going through as they were experiencing what they were experiencing.
She woke up, she's flipping out. Where's my brother? Is this really heaven? I mean, really the only thing she's missing in this scene is a rosary to clutch and a god figure to invoke his name. And really, it just starts hammering to me that this is just, again, a shitty religious episode theme to this whole thing. From here out, I'm going to need you to guide us a little bit because I was so checked out at this point that I actually fell asleep.
Oh, Jesus.
And when I woke back up, I couldn't find the shits to give to actually rewind to wherever. So take the helm here for a little bit.
I got you. It's okay.
Yeah.
I got you, man. It's all right. The next scene after we get done with the resurrection situation is that we get more Dutch angles and dread while we hear about the Kevorkian Butthead's euthanasia device. And the doctor, the thanatologist, is explaining, like, you're incredibly important. You're the first person ever to come back from death. You need to tell us more. And this is where he finally starts to figure out, Harry Kim does, oh, I need to not do that now. I think I've fucked this up. First contact, all that stuff we already mentioned. But at this point, the thanatologist isn't having any of it. And he's like, no, well, guess what? You're gonna be our guinea pig.
Please use his proper Star Trek name, Mark Twain.
Mark Twain, thanatologist. Yes. He's trending towards kind of being angry and wanting to lab rat Harry Kim. So we cut back to Voyager, and they have figured out, the truth that they've already come to partially realize, and they're in the middle of this alien graveyard, basically. They've got 200,000 identifiable alien remains in these asteroids around them.
280,000. So does that mean that 280,000 people have, I don't know, maybe the planet's got a small population?
Well, they did mention that over time they just decompose into those spider webs. So that's actually part of their natural process. And so some of the spider webs they were walking through were just long decomposed bodies.
I found that.
Which, by the way, it resulted in Chakotay having this ashen look in his face while the doctor says, yes, while you were walking through those cobwebs, you were disturbing people's graves.
Yeah. So I had woken back up at this point. Yeah, it's like, oh God, I didn't know I was walking through a graveyard. And it's like, you totally fucking knew you were walking through a graveyard. Like, what do you care? What'd you think? They
have a better talk with the alien lady, Platera, I believe they call her. And she's calmer now, and Janeway explains, I have no answers for you about what you thought this was going to be. I can tell you where you are. I can tell you what I know. And she's trying real hard to emotionally connect with her, like, because she is freaking out. She's like, what? Like, she's calmer now, but she is still, like, emotionally wrecked by the revelation that she is not in the afterlife. And she says, well, listen, I can't answer your questions about what really happens when you die, but I can tell you that I will do everything in my power to get you as many answers as I possibly can. And before they can take that scene much further, they get rocked a little bit, get a little space turbulence, because apparently some bodies are suddenly showing up in space fissures on Voyager. I felt like the scene that they had in sickbay was pretty strong. Janeway, I thought, was really good in this episode. She's really attempting to be a diplomat. She's attempting to be a scientist. She's doing all the things we expect, a Starfleet captain to do, particularly one with a science background. And I have no complaints. I feel like they did her character justice in this one.
Yeah, strong performance by her. And now's a good time to point out we're missing a lot of cast members in this episode. Does Tuvok get any screen time?
Tuvok's on screen, but he has essentially minor expository dialogue. Same with Tom Paris. No Neelix at all. Neelix is not seen, so that's 2 episodes out of the 7 we'll have watched so far that have no Neelix whatsoever.
Taurus is on deck. She gets some pretty good action, and Seska's around. Chakotay's stupid ass is obviously there.
Yeah, I mean, everybody else gets more screen time. And obviously, Harry Kim. This is our first time really getting to know much about him, and considering how bad he's been as a supporting character so far, I felt like his accidentally bumbling his way through a first contact, doing everything that he wasn't supposed to do, was good. I was expecting him to be really shitty in this, and he wasn't.
No, he came through.
And that.
I find it suspect that, as the episode progresses, that there are more and more bodies being deposited on the asteroids around them, and specifically on the ship. Like, these situations in Star Trek, like, oh, hey, this major concern we have at the end wasn't immediately evident when we showed up. I could have also gone, again, drawing back to I Love Transporter Accidents. I thought it'd been cool if like some of these bodies are just half hanging out of the warp core and causing some real concerns for the ship and the crew.
You actually get an industrial accident in this one, though. I thought you'd be so happy.
Maybe I was sleeping through it. What happened?
Okay, so as the episode continues and we cut back to the other planet dimension.
Before we do, the sense of dread, I think the one thoughtful takeaway point to the episode, once they get a little bit past, again, what I still feel is religion bashing and, the Starfleet science shitting all over their concept of whatever the afterlife is going to be. And you say that they try to gingerly dance around it, but Kim is pretty upfront with Mr. Anorexic about like, your family sucks and, the culture using the poo pods, suiciding themselves in an attempt to fast forward to the next emanation, their next stage of life. The good bit of actual personal horror, I think, here is when the girl that ends up on Voyager realizes like, oh God, we've been using these suicide pods thinking that, we're just shortcutting to a good time. And really, how many people in our civilization have just cut their life short for some of the worst of reasons possible on what is essentially a lie.
And this is exactly what I liked about the episode. You said personal horror. I could not have described it better. All three of the alien characters we get to know experience that personal horror in different ways. Mark Twain, the thanatologist, has his, underpinnings of his society and his understanding of what he's devoted his life to put into question. The emancipated man has his societal obligations questioned after he realizes that what he has signed up to do, so he's not a burden on his family, may not be what he was thinking he was signing up for. And then you've got the young lady who did die and transferred over, who now has to confront the truth that it isn't what she expected it to be. And nothing that she was trained her whole life to believe was true ended up actually being true. So that's where I loved it. Like all of those scenes and all of the actors who were playing those guest roles nailed it in conveying that in a way that I felt was pretty powerful, given that we're dealing with mid-90s, sci-fi TV on the UPN. The next scene actually that we see in the episode is the emancipated guy talking to his wife, really having a breakdown of his belief, trying to get out of what he committed himself to, and then he has that talk with Harry where he explains he's basically being put on the ice floe because he was in an accident and he's a burden to his family to take care of, and that this wasn't necessarily his idea. It was sort of gently forced upon him.
He got voluntold to go do it. I believe he said that there's a family meeting that was held about
there's an intervention.
What's going to happen, and they voted his ass off the island, and now he's got to go sign up for self-elected suicide transport out. And he's complaining to his wife like, I don't know if I feel good about this, and she's like, well, what do you mean? And I want to be like, look, you've been in the same room as I have. Can you not hear past the the threefold divider between us and this alien guy who's very clearly saying that, we're ending up in Space Spider asteroid belt? I think they're painting a picture there that she just wants this dude out of her life and she's willing to kind of ignore it and push it along. But when Harry comes back over and they start talking, and Harry really starts laying out like, yeah, you're getting fucked and your family's just basically pushing you into pointless suicide. One of the biggest plot holes, I think, in the episode, these guys, this is where you really see how sickly this guy is. He's like wrapping himself up in funerary shrouds.
Yeah, so he's got this, I don't know what you would call it, giant, tape. Ugly scarf. Yes.
It's like a shitty, like he's turning himself into like a Tron mummy.
Yeah, so let's hold on that for a second because that's near the end. We've got a little bit more that happens. Voyager's turned into a body trap, because apparently these subspace fissures are attracted to the warp core, so they got to bounce for a while. And while they figure out what to do so they can go back and continue this plan to try and find Harry Kim, Kess steps in, has a little talk with the alien lady about what's going on, with some real weird looking like pretzel shit in a martini glass. I don't know the fuck that was supposed to be. Probably some Neelix space rat shit. And we get more background as to what these aliens believe the afterlife would be like. We get more breakdown from this lady confronting, the horror.
Can we make the episode name Space Rat Shit Martinis?
Oh man, I don't want to put shit in the title.
I know.
But
in my mind, that's what this title is going to be.
It'll be the title in our hearts.
Yeah. So what's she laying down to this? Because I think I might have fallen back asleep for this part too.
Yeah, Kess is trying to basically buck her up a little bit, but she's not having any of it, and she starts to break down again about she's not supposed to be here. This is not what she wanted. She should, she wants no part of being on Voyager or in this reality, since it represents, her whole life being a lie. So this happens to be right when they problem solve an idea and how to deal with the getting Harry Kim back and sending this lady back to her own dimension, which is to recreate the transporter accident, because they're attracting all of these subspace fissures. So we'll wait until one opens up, going to bring another body through, and we'll do the swap. We'll send her back, and we'll send her back with this transponder that will allow her to give it to Harry Kim and say, okay, just hold on to this, and the next time one of these fissures opens, we'll grab you and we'll beam you out. And the lady's all about it. She wants to get the fuck out. She gets warned. Janeway's like, we don't know if this is actually going to work or not. But she's like, fine, don't care. Get me the fuck out of here.
Is she excited at all at the prospect that, hey, I was supposed to go to heaven and all I got was this stupid cancer removed off the base stem of my brain?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a lack of gratitude of the fact they basically decancered her and then zombie revified her into.
Before I go, can you please thank your Federation necromancer for his service? Here, give him this gold coin to cover the cost of his, ritual components.
So they take you to a transporter room, once again manned by Seska, with the device, and they're like, all right, Seska, make it happen. And Seska tries to pull the beam off. What should happen is that it all goes wrong. They can't get her through the subspace fissure because it closes. And so they try to pull her back, but Seska's all can't make it work, and they throw emergency power into it, and they finally pull the alien lady back, but she's got all the cobwebs on her because what's happened?
Space Spiders got her.
Space Spiders got her. They nailed her with a critical hit. She failed that check. She dropped below -10 hit points. She's a goner. And apparently whatever Ray's dead they burned to get her the first time. Doctor does not have another. No true resurrection here.
Who's our favorite necromancer? Because that's going to be EMH's new name.
They ascertain she's dead. Now this is where I kind of had to take a second, because of course Stevie was like, wait a second, if she's dead again, why can't they just do the same damn thing they did the first time to wake her back up? Like, she seems less dead this time. She's only got a little bit of spider web on her. Like, why is she dead now?
Two choices here. Explanation number one is that the necromantic resurrection ability is a once a day cooldown, and that
it could be
tapped himself. And two is that Seska is intentionally botching these transporters. She's like fucking the Nurse Jackie of the transporter room. She's just fucking sabotaging and fucking people up.
I mean, she doesn't want to get Harry Kim back, right? It's part of this. It's part of the Maquis are actually good terrorist headcanon.
Or she's just a
Seska's like, I gotta live
serial killer.
Yeah, like, no, not. I'm gonna fuck this up too. Can't get that Harry Kim back. We need one less bridge officer loyal to Janeway. But we get our industrial accident at long last for you there, Peter, and we've got a dead alien. And so they're out of options as what to do. But fortunately for everybody, Harry Kim, he's got a plan. And his plan is to convince the emaciated alien to say, fuck all this killing myself shit, and let Harry Kim basically take his place. So the idea here is that there's this body, encompassing shroud
Tron mummy.
that makes you look like your was it Tron money? Tron mummy.
Tron mummy, yeah.
Harry Kim convinces the emaciated man to go fuck off into the mountains where he's got some friends and not die. And instead, Harry
Not
Kim
commit
will
suicide.
right, and Harry Kim will wrap himself in the Tron mummy stuff and take his place because the idea is that Harry's like, well, it's going to get me back to my dimension. It'll also kill me, but I have a necromancer back on my ship. They'll search my belongings. They're going to find that 7th level resurrection scroll, and he's got to use magic item. He's going to be able to puss that thing out, and he's going to be able to make it work for me.
It's very presumptuous of Harry to think that, again, they're dealing with some sort of teleporting shard thing that is not going to be a time travel device as well, and that he's not going to either show up before Voyager even arrived or months after Voyager has left for a slow, boring, lonely death on space spider asteroid. So let me just start throwing the heaviest of punches and the biggest of rocks through the plot holes here. First of all, the alien dude, he's talking while he's wrapping himself up as a Tron mummy. He's like, this funeral shroud, this is a big deal. This is my father's father. And I remember, when my dad put it on, he fully believed in all this stuff. And if it's a one-way trip to space spider asteroid, how are they getting these funerary shrouds back?
Well, when Harry Kim shows up in sickbay, he appears to be naked. So I would think that you don't leave with your clothes out of the poop pod.
Yeah,
that's my only explanation.
When that girl shows up in sickbay and they get her out of the spider webbing, she's not naked.
Well, we see her after she's been revivified, but before she's made conscious. So they could have easily put her in clothes.
I'm not buying it, but we'll continue. And then also, so like when Harry does finally start, con this dude into, hey, don't commit suicide, just go run up in the mountains and be happy and free. Like the first dude is like so incredibly thin, and then doughy Harry Kim jumps in there. He's like obviously twice the fucking size. This guy's wife doesn't catch on at all. Like the dude doesn't sound like her husband at all, and is like twice as big and not limping around. But she's she's just so excited to get this motherfucker out of here. She's like, I don't care. It could be very clearly a grizzly bear half wrapped up in this bandage, and I'd still, as long as he can fit in the poo pod and I can wash my hands of his ass, we're good to go.
And she even hits the button to do the murder.
Yeah.
She's like, all right, I'm done. This is a free lady. Time to hit the club.
Someone saw Tinder on my phone. I'm done. I'm out. Tired of that motherfucker.
Of course, it all conveniently works out in the end. Harry's body winds up on the ship, and the doctor, sure enough, has got his global cooldown on his battle res. See, I'm throwing in some new nerd reference there. Has expired, and he's able to quickly revivify Harry Kim, and all is well. Aside from this alien planet that possibly is another dimension that may have just had all of its preconceptions about death completely shattered. But aside from that distinct possibility, everything's okay now. Yay!
Yeah, the final scene is Janeway finding Kim in the mess hall. And Kim's like, hey, I'm good to go for work tomorrow. And she's like, no, you're off for 2 days because, we rushed through life too quick. And she starts waxing poetic. And really, she's like, I want you to live in the moment and really savor the experience. And I'm thinking, like, the experience here, I think, just boils down basically to, like, Chakotay's ineptitude and failure that just caused this entire fiasco in the first part. And she just wants Harry to dwell on that, I think.
To dwell. Think about who put you in this position, Harry.
Think
about who your loyalties really
if
are.
only
too.
you had scanned those bodies, Harry, you could have potentially, undid a lot of the damage that you just caused by completely disregard. I wonder if he filed all that shit in his report, his gross disregard of the Prime Directive. And of course, there is the throwaway line in here like, oh well, we did read that there's some weird radiation that comes off these people and flies off into the ring around this planet, and maybe that's heaven after all.
They specifically say like it's neural energy and there's stuff going on they don't understand. And it all leads to the overall theme that they've been pointing out, especially the Federation people, like we don't actually know what happens after death. There's a lot that we don't know. And so maybe there is something going on here at this specific place with this specific race that is not able to be understood by the way we traditionally understand things. And they kind of leave it there.
We're in the Federation. We don't really know what happens after death. We certainly don't have any necromancers in our employ, and we are absolutely not able to bring anyone back from death. So that's us. Nothing to see here. We're just normal spacefaring people who are absolutely not playing God and tinkering with death like a plaything.
The Federation doesn't understand what happens after death because nobody fucking dies. That's the episode. I agree with you that there are shortcuts. I agree with you that there's a point or two where you're like, really? I agree the doctor can revivify you is kind of a real fucking stretch. But
out of all the technology stuff that they've really kind of pulled out of their asses, I mean, the post-mortem resuscitation technique was the biggest head scratcher that I think I've seen out of Voyager yet. I can't forgive the number of built-in rub it in your face moments like Chakotay. Don't scan these bodies, and the guy saying, where's the scanned bodies, and some of the other stuff here. I get you like the episode. I can respect the personal horror angle of these 3 different viewpoints, each dealing with a personal crisis in a different way. In some ways, it kind of reminds me of what's that? It was the season finale out of TNG for season 1, Neutral Zone, where they find the 3 people in the cryopods.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's like that. It's cool that they're using different viewpoints. I thought all the camera work was annoying and hokey. Instead, let me pitch you an episode where they beam onto an asteroid and they get attacked by space spiders. There's some really cool phaser fights. A couple red shirts die. You can still fit in some Federation necromancy. And at the end of the day, they find the treasure chest full of new periodic table element and barely escape. Give me that dungeon crawl. That's what I want.
Not saying that wouldn't have been a compelling episode. Not saying that, but I feel like you can really forgive some of the sins, even the egregious ones, in service to what I thought was 3 really clutch performances from guest actors, an interesting idea delivered with a defter hand than I thought they would manage, and good Janeway stuff too, which I'm always hungry for. Is it the best episode? No. But is it a flawed episode? Yes, but I think it's good. I was entertained and I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed thinking about it while I was watching it. And considering what we've seen so far, I'd clearly call it the second best one we've seen.
No way in hell.
Yeah. I mean, that's not a high bar to clear, because aside from Eye of the Needle, what would you say is the second best? Parallax?
Flip back here.
I mean, like, what else is there? Everything else is just either the premiere, which just fucked itself into the dirt, or absolute garbage, one way or another.
I guess Parallax would probably be certainly not the Candy Corn Tragedy. Phage would be the second best.
I would say that this episode had more. I liked this episode more than Phage.
This episode could have plugged into any other TV show just as well. It was okay TV, and it was, in my opinion, not Star Trek. and I'm watching these, looking for Star Trek stuff like this. Things that expand beyond the confines of a story about a spaceship and people on the spaceship. Push that into like second and third seasons. You've got so much stuff to focus on, and especially in 90s TV where, well, I guess it wasn't quite the sink or swim situation that we're dealing with modern TV, but they just stray so far away from the base subject material. And I'm like, I would not continue watching this series, I don't think, if I was coming into it fresh. And that's probably why I didn't do it when the first time it came out.
Let me ask you this question in light of what you just said. You say this episode could have fit on any other television show. What show would you see this on? Like, I struggle to consider a better place for this to go but Star Trek.
Anything with a supernatural element to it, or magic, which is, I don't know. I don't feel that Star Trek was the proper place for this story.
I feel it is the only proper place, but we can agree to disagree, Peter. I'm invigorated that we actually had a difference of opinion. That's good. We need that.
I'll tell you what I need is a good episode, because at this point it's been 2 duds in my book. So what's coming up next here?
Next episode is Prime Factors, which is an episode I have a stronger memory of because I believe I watched it, some years ago, but more recently. I'm not sure if it's necessarily going to meet your qualifications for good, but I think it is definitely much more a Voyager episode in terms of dealing with their specific predicament rather than maybe a general Star Trek episode. And it definitely deals with the Prime Directive, but not in the way you think.
Well, again, check out the brand new Facebook group where you can go.
Yeah, just check us out. If you go to the V'ger Please Facebook page, there are multiple links pointing you towards the group. Again, we'll be happy to add you to that. Give us a like on Facebook. Of course, always follow, subscribe, give us reviews on whatever service you like to consume quality podcasts on. And we will always happily take any emails or messages you send us. Email us at vgerplease@gmail.com.
Or if you want to jump on the new group and tell Joe that he was wrong and this was a piece of garbage episode and that I was right, we would love to see that in public. So humiliate
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't argue with people on the internet, so I'm definitely a punching bag when it comes to that sort of thing.
We'll pull punches for our fans.
Of course.
In closing, I'm going to go ahead and take a closer examination of Mr. Eating Disorder and his wife, who was quick and thankful to push the button on what was very clearly not her husband in the poo pod. Treat people in your debt like family. Exploit them. Rule of acquisition 111.
Oh, that's yeah. Okay. Yeah. That. On that note, this has been V'ger Please, A Hateful Voyage to the Delta Quadrant. I'm Joseph.
I'm Peter.
And we will see you guys next week. Peace.